as a partnership.
No, I agree with that. And I think so. I'll say this for specifically for you is there's proof in that because you mentioned the key thing there. You said, what is the root cause? What is the pain point? And oftentimes what can happen is system integrators can go in, they hear a problem and they provide a solution without finding out the root cause.
For me, you've obviously got the we're all kind of thinking of the project team charts, and you've got that hierarchy at the top. And that's great from a governance perspective, but we all do need to work together.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Digital Transformation Talks with Akadis Global. Today we're going to be talking about people in digital transformation, their impact, their roles, and the best kind of people for a successful digital transformation journey. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. He is a seasoned program and project manager in the digital transformation space, specifically in my field, which is ERP implementations. It's Dwayne Lynch. Dwayne, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a long time coming, so I'm glad to finally be here.
Excellent. So let's start by giving everyone a bit of an introduction about yourself.
I've been in program management since 2007. I kind of started as a project analyst way back when. I always say I got bitten by the Microsoft Dynamics bug about 12 years ago, and I haven't been able to find a cure. So I'm still with it, and I'm still enjoying it.
Likewise. No, I think I'm in the same boat. So we met and worked together while both at KPMG.
Yep.
And we were thrown into a massive digital transformation project at the time. Mm-hmm. So it was a combination of Microsoft Dynamics were moving from AX to D365. So it was actually before the D365 name change. And for those in our field, they'll know in those early days, there was new features and it was ever changing on a weekly basis. Couple that with a very successful tech company who were running one finance solution, integrating with about 30 other different solutions. That had its challenges, and that was my first time working with you as a project manager. Today I want to focus on not just specifically the project manager, but from your viewpoint as a project manager, the importance of people on digital transformation. And I think that ties in nicely with ASOS, because I think one of the successes of that project was the different kinds of people we had. 100%. And we seemed to almost luck out by having good people in all of the important places. So let's just start by talking about the role of the project manager and the people you engage with.
It's interesting because when I talk about project management and the role that I play, I always kind of give the analogy of being a bit of a cheerleader, kind of the rah-rah and the kind of getting the motivation and setting the tone and being the person at the beginning of the day who kind of says, right, this is what we need to do, this is how we do it. And if you like, leading by example. And, people talk about Gantt charts and risk registers and all of the things that you need to do to ensure that proper governance is in place. But actually, when it really comes down to it, it's a people-based role, and it really is about trying to drive, inspire, and motivate people to go on the transformation journey. So that's kind of how I see my role at a macro level, and then obviously ensuring that you've got the right governance, you've got the right controls in place is fundamental to the role as well.
Absolutely, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think in terms of the people that you interact with, and in terms of the importance, there's obviously different levels, and we refer to them as stakeholders, and you've got your senior stakeholders, and then you've got your SMEs. Just in your experience, what does a good senior stakeholder look like? So I'm talking about your product owners, your C-suite execs, and the likes.
It's tough, really, because at your C-suite level, I always say they set the tone. They have set what the strategy looks like for the organization. What is it that we're trying to do with this transformation? Are we trying to streamline processes? Are we trying to integrate with better technology? What's our journey look like? And I always say they set the tone, because if we're on a journey where we're saying, you know what, we're going to do more configuration and customization. We're going to use the standard tools out of the box, and we're not going to try and make it as complex as we can. That really does start from the top. Yeah. And if that message isn't clear at the top and isn't part of the strategy, then the people who we're working with, who are in the day-to-day and involved in a lot of the design workshops that we're doing, they're not necessarily going to understand that ethos. So that they're really, really crucial in terms of setting the tone. Your product owner, the product owner's arguably one of the most important roles that you can have on a program, because ultimately they are driving the success. They are the people who understand what the process looks like today, and we need to work really clearly with them to work out what it's going to look like going forward. So sometimes, and you will have had this, and I've been in meetings with you where you're trying to really use the power of Microsoft ERP to really sell what it's doing and how this process is going to change their current process. And sometimes you meet that resistance.
Yep.
But the really good product managers are the people who can see the benefit of that, and they can understand the point that you're trying to get across, and they can compare it and contrast it to the current processes that they're using and say, do you know what? I trust you. I trust you. You're bringing insight into my organization, and I'm going to trust you with that. And those are really the product owners that I like working with.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I hark back to projects we've worked on together before. And like I said, we were very fortunate. If you take the example of ASOS, who are actually known as, they're a fashion company, but they're actually a pure technology company, as they describe themselves. And the beauty of working with them is because they were a pure technology company, they were very much for the innovation, and innovation not just in systems, but in process. So it was certainly an easier sell getting that across the line. But you're right, we also had a really good product owner there. And one of the characteristics I love in a product owner is a product owner that knows the line and can clearly see the line between where we need to innovate and change process and follow a new blueprint, against where actually we need to work out the configuration, customization, integration needed so that we can meet this existing process and optimize it. And I think where you have that, the conversation becomes a lot easier in terms of what we're going to build and how long it's going to take to build it. So on the flip side, and on the other side to that sort of person, you've got the product owner or the C-suite exec who is opposed to change, who believes their current process is gold and they don't want to move away from it. How do you deal with that? Because from a project manager point of view, you first catch wind of that when you're trying to get different stage gates signed off and they're refusing to sign it off because the design is not as they're expecting, or they're arguing the solution's not working as expected. How do you deal with those sort of product owners when you have those issues?
It's a really tough one, and it happens often because sometimes people are naturally invested in a current process, or they're invested in a way of doing things, and actually trying to bring them on this journey and try and make them change what that looks like can be quite difficult. And sometimes, and you are brilliant at this, Khalid. It's sometimes a case of having that conversation and kind of saying, okay, well, what are the blockers? What are the obstacles? What is it really that's the blocker here? Because on the face of it, it might just feel like person A doesn't want to do process B, and that's it. There can be a number of different reasons why. It could be actually this person spent a long time getting that process up and running, so changing it now almost makes it seem like it was useless, or there are certain teams behind that process that people have got relationships with. So actually changing it now might mean there's less confidence in that person. There can be a whole number of reasons, and it really is about understanding what the root cause of that obstruction is, and getting to and dealing with that and tackling that and trying to see if that can be resolved. Because once that's done, then you can go on that journey and you can work together in a partnership, as opposed to it being, it's like a supplier comes in and in that the traditional sense of, man comes in his grey suit. It's not necessarily about that kind of consultancy-based person. It is a partnership. Yeah. And I always do like to say, let's work together and let's get to the end of this program, because at the end of the day, your success is my success. And it'll be us having that go live drink at the end of it and sharing that success. Yeah. So I think it's key to get in early and really try and see what we can do to drive it together and get those benefits out of it as a partnership.
No, I agree with that. And I think so. I'll say this for specifically for you, is that buy-in early is needed. And they need to buy in not only to the solution, to the processes we're showing, but we talk about people and the importance of people. And we're talking about the C-suite execs, and we're talking about the product owners, but also on the side of the system integrator. So you come mainly from a system integrator background with some of the tier one consultancy firms that operate globally. From that side of things, we also need the right people there as well. And I'd say you are the right people when I look at the model of a program manager or a project manager, because you're very likable and very and someone who I've seen firsthand clients find trust in, because they know that you want that partnership, you want that success. You're also not just there to get it in and get out effectively. And there's proof in that, because you mentioned a key thing there. You said, what is the root cause? What is the pain point? And oftentimes what can happen is system integrators can go in, they hear a problem and they provide a solution without finding out the root cause. And more often than not, where we do that, the solution won't fit, and it either causes another problem or it doesn't solve the original problem. The same people that were unhappy will still be unhappy. So I think it's very important that on both sides of the fence, there's the right mindset. There's the mindset for partnership to have any kind of success in a digital implementation. And in addition to that, again, I always speak to having the in-house expertise within the client side to help that relationship as well. So that's someone who knows the system, but also understands the business process and understands both sides, because both sides bring different things to the party. And resourcing the team is also very important. So you've made mention already. There's the people on the ground, and then there's also the people on the integrator side. So from your viewpoint, what does a successful project team structure look like for some of the more complex models? And when we say complex models, the multinational companies rolling out, the full suite of Microsoft Dynamics 365. So that's finance, supply chain, maybe project management, accounting, or CRM even. What does that project team structure look like?
It's such a good question, because teams that need to deliver complex transformations, they do need to be kind of multi-skilled. There does need to absolutely be a multi-skilled skill set in terms of dynamics knowledge, technical knowledge, being able to understand what the product is, being able to understand and elicit requirements from the organization, really understanding integrations, understanding data. We've worked with some really good data migration people who will properly embody themselves in the work of it. And for me, you've obviously got we're all kind of thinking of the project team charts, and you've got that hierarchy at the top. And that's great from a governance perspective, but we all do need to work together. Yep. And I often think, and I'm not going to go into it in much detail, but I often think of my project teams as a bit of a football team, in terms of, you've got your goalkeeper, who is very much the last line of defense, and that's kind of normally your risk partner or somebody like that, who's, if it goes wrong, they are the person who the buck stops with. Yeah. I often see my role, and I think I've said this to you when I was on ASOS, as, if you like, that person in midfield, the controller, if you like, the conductor, spraying passes around the place, just making sure that everything's ticking over. But the solution architect, and I'm not trying to make your head, your big head, even bigger, to be honest, is around that kind of creative number 10, that genius who can really work with the client to understand.
Trequartista, if you will.
Of course, why not? That person who can work with the client and understand what their needs and what some of their concerns are, what are their goals, what do their strategy looks like, and being able to reference a catalogue of, okay, well, we did this on that client and that worked perfectly for them, or actually there's a new feature that's come out over here and we can leverage that to resolve that particular problem there. And that really is the absolute creative hub. So working with that solution architect, and we've worked together, I lean on my solution architects so unbelievably heavily, because they are the creative genius and the reference point behind everything that we do. So, like I say, it's multi-skilled, because if you don't get your requirements right, and the solution architect can't be in absolutely every single interaction with the client, so we're trusting people and we're working with people, and there is so much that goes into the formation of a team, and how it's governed, and what the escalation processes look like, how often that we meet. Is it on a daily basis? Is it weekly? Is there a checkpoint? What does that look like? And so much of that that thought and the stuff that I enjoy doing. I kind of geek out at the beginning of a program, setting up all of these things, because they're absolutely fundamental and they're critical success factors to the running of a transformation program.
No, I agree absolutely, and I do like the analogy of the different team members and their importance. And you mentioned something there about the program manager being the conductor, or whether it's program manager or project manager being the conductor. And I think that's absolutely true, because in the team structure, you're going to have different work streams, and they're parallel running work streams. So I always say, I've been doing this now, I think I'm in my 13th or 14th year doing implementations, and I could never be a project manager or program manager. Like, I know this
You've
is...
said that to me quite a few times as well.
I know dynamics inside and out. I know every facet of the solution, but to be a project manager on an implementation project, I just cannot do it, because there's a skill required to manage multiple work streams, people working at different levels of detail, and all of that feeds into that governance model you spoke about, because there's going to be a different level of detail. So at the highest level of the organization, it's high level detail, but we're focused on important things, and every message you deliver, I assume, is in relation to, this is what's happening, this is the impact of time, this is the impact of cost. Whereas at the lowest level, it's more focused on the people and the process and the impact. So when you're setting up, and like I say, one of your favorite parts of an implementation is setting up that governance structure. In your mind, what are the must-haves for that governance structure, regardless of size or even solution, digital transformation in general? What are the core must-haves for any kind of success?
It's a really good question. I think that the core must-haves for me are, and I know it sounds quite boring, but that cadence.
Right.
How whilst you've got the governance framework and you've got the team hierarchy and all that stuff is great, how often are we meeting? With who? So, if I'm meeting with a program director or a partner in the case, what is the information that they're going to need? Yeah. How much detail do they want? And actually, do I need to tailor the way that I'm reporting to them? Because they don't want to know about, like I call it, the bits and the bytes. They're not interested in that. They want to know, are we still on track? Are we on budget? Have we got the right resources? Are the client happy? Are the clients seeing the benefits that they sought when we had this conversation at the first place? Those are the things that somebody at that higher level wants to understand. Whereas at the lower level, the crucial people who are working with us, and they're eliciting the requirements, and they're configuring the system, and they're doing all of the coding, they want to understand, okay, well, what's my escalation process? Yeah. If I'm butting heads with a client over a particular requirement, then how do I go about logging that? Is there a process on Azure DevOps? Do I talk to the PM? How do I do that? And really is about setting up what that change structure looks like. And then there's all of the other more technical elements of it. So what does my config template look like? And what environment am I going to be setting? All of that stuff. And one of the things, and it's happening on a program that I'm working on at the moment, one of the things that always seems to take a long time setting up these programs is getting Azure DevOps sorted out. I've never understood why. I feel the rage happening at the moment, and the reason it's so annoying for me is because that tends to be the core center of every program that I work on. So if that isn't in place, it can just make things really, really difficult. So for me, I think those are some of the fundamental: how you report, how you escalate, what the change mechanism looks like, and essentially getting that DevOps side, whether or not you're using Azure DevOps or Jira or something else, making sure that that's set up, understood, documented, and everybody knows exactly how to use it.
Yeah. No, I love that, because that Azure DevOps piece is actually common across a lot of clients. They do say that, or people that work on the SI side as well. They say it takes a long time to get set up. And the disconnect typically is we are implementing on the client's Azure tenant. So it has to go through this. So ideally, you're hoping on the client side, they've got in-house expertise on how to set all this up in Azure DevOps. But typically, most clients or most people working for someone will go through an ERP implementation with a company once every 10 years or so, if you stay there a long period of time. So it's usually everyone's first time. So that's somewhere for us as Akadis Global where we fit in quite well with a lot of our clients. We have that knowledge and we are client side. So we are able to get LCS up and running, connect to Azure DevOps, get the pipelines, the necessary pipelines configured for deployment of customization, but for the technical side, and then on the functional side, getting DevOps up and running for test suites when we get ready for testing, regression testing, functional requirements gathering, project management in terms of dashboard. So we're able to provide end-to-end. So one of the features we've had a lot of clients call us in for is that particular startup piece and also the org structure. So I've actually found that that's the key to getting this up and running really, really quickly. You've got to have that knowledge in-house, or you've got to call someone in to support you with it. But I absolutely agree with the importance of things like that, but also the right information going to the right people and the cadence, because there is such a thing as too many meetings. And you know me, I get very busy in the weeds of things with the client, and to get dragged out to meetings for the sake of meetings, that's that's a fast way to lose people on a project. Yeah. So managing that from a project management side, that's key. And what do you do? Is there a formula in your head as a project manager that says this is too much, this is enough, or does it tweak from client to client depending on their needs?
It tweaks from client to client, but I think it kind of tweaks almost from week to week, to be honest.
Right, okay.
I try my hardest not to be too rigid at the beginning, because at the beginning of a program, you'll do your stakeholder analysis, you'll look at who's in your team, you'll look at how often that we need to meet with the client, and things will naturally start changing because you know yourself, you're in a design phase, you're kind of meeting at least every other day anyway about requirement solicitation. So do you really need a checkpoint with the client at that point to say, okay, well, where are we at that point? But then you start going through your build phase where it can seem like you're kind of chucking things over the fence a little bit more, and you do need to still maintain that cadence. So having the right dashboards that allow your clients to kind of see what the progress looks like is quite key. I mean, I'm working on a program at the moment where we're constantly talking about the amount of meetings that we're in, because there's the other side of it where if you're in too many meetings, then when is there time to do the work? When is there time to customize? When is there time to configure? When is there time to start on a data migration that I'm always whinging about? Mainly for past experiences that have burnt me somewhat. So there does need to be a balance there. But I think for me, as long as you've got some kind of steerco or program board where you're able to air out exactly where we are on the project, put your cards on the table and say, okay, well, this is where we are. Are we comfortable with that? As long as you've got a cadence with your internal consultants where you're able to say, okay, well, are there any themes that are coming up? Is there anything that we need to resolve? Then that's great. The cadence with the product owner is the one that I think needs to be reviewed often. Yeah. Because again, are you meeting daily? Are you meeting kind of a couple of times a week? What does that look like? Yeah. Because we've also, a lot of the product owners that I work with have a day job as well. Yeah. They can't just be, as much as we want them to be kind of 100%.
It's never 100% utilization.
It never works like that, because there's a reason why they're the product owners, because they get the process quite a lot. Absolutely. So we do have to be really careful with how we leverage their time. So it does need to be kind of a continuous review process.
You tailor it, and to your point, you're absolutely right. You're going to tailor it almost between the different phases of the project as well. It's going to need to tailor, and depending on how the project's going, will obviously determine how you tailor it. Speaking of the progress and how projects go, we've kind of discussed the happy path now. Let's discuss probably what majority of digital transformation projects look like, which is when things go wrong. And when, we're talking about people today. So let's say we're talking about a scenario where digital transformation has gone awry because we didn't have the right people involved at the start. We've not had good engagement from the right people at the right levels. When it starts to go wrong and you face those challenges, what are the steps you're taking to resolve? What do those challenges look like?
So one of my colleagues always says, in these instances, you need to be data driven. you need to really look at the underlying data to get a view as to, okay, well, where are we? So
Right.
any recovery project that I'm on, I will look at, okay, well, where are we with the number of user stories that we were meant to deliver?
Okay.
What was the projection for when we expected to have X amount of those user stories completed, and what is the gap between the two?
Yep.
Because then at least you've got a clear picture of, okay, well, we were meant to be at Y, we're at X. In order to actually calculate the amount of time needed, this is what we need to do. And is that a certain amount of extra resources? Is it an amount of extra time? Is it a reduced amount of scope? And these are, I've heard the phrase used by a former mutual colleague of ours. These are what I call come to Jesus sessions,
Yes.
where you have to sit down, you put your cards on the table and say, right, these are the options.
Yeah.
Is it scope? Is it time? Is it cost and resources?
Yeah.
And how do we go about that? And it's a really difficult one to ensure that you've got the right people in the room to make that decision, but they need to be the decision makers. They absolutely need to be the decision makers, because those are really big calls that we need to make. And like I say, it has to start from the basis of data. I've gone on a bit of a data kind of analyst journey recently where I've somehow got obsessed with Power BI. I don't know where it's come from, but I'm just addicted to it. And I think that mindset allows me to kind of say, okay, well, how do we tell a story with data? And how can we use that to form the basis of a conversation that allows us to get to where we need to get for that the purpose of that meeting.
Absolutely. So the point around data and that decision making happening off the back of data, because oftentimes you can get. Funny you mentioned the come to Jesus meeting. So I've been.
Were
on
you
a
at that
project.
meeting with me?
I think I've been on one with you, but I've been at another one as well where it went in the calendar as a CTJ, CTJ slash, how do we not miss the go live deadline basically? And I remember, so what's CTJ like? Is this some sort of C-suite steerco? He's like, no, this is come to Jesus meeting. And you look at the invites list and all the big wigs are there, but you can often get on these CTJ calls and it's a lot of, not necessarily emotion, but a bit of emotion and it's all opinion. And it's like, oh, the system's crap, or, the system doesn't work well, or people are not doing this and this is not, and it's this person's fault, this person's fault. But you're right. The moment you go into one of those sessions, you say, okay, what's the actual underlying data? What's, how far off are we? What is, I oftentimes like to go to those sessions with some sort of visualization of what the critical path is, right? What's on the critical path in? Typically for any business that's transacted, it's, being able to receive money into the business. To receive money, you got to be able to get invoices out. Probably need to be able to ship goods out. So looking at the critical path, where are we here and what's the impact to the critical path? And let's make some decisions based off that. And then to your other point about having the right people in the room, if it's a CTJ meeting, then not only do you need decisions, but you need quick decisions. And you need to be able to act quickly. You need some authority to work on in those sessions. So it's funny. It gave me a flashback of the CTJ.
Yeah.
It's panic, but
scary times.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, I don't know. For me, you know what I'm like. So almost those moments are some of the more exciting times on projects, because it's going to be when everyone's worked up. That's often where I find I'm the calmest, because I know, okay, there's problems here to solve, and that's my bag.
They're uncomfortable, but what you find at the end of them is that there's almost kind of a more of a partnership, because we've been in that together.
Yes.
And that needs to be the driving theme behind those conversations. If it's people throwing blame over the fence, then you're never going to get to any kind of resolution. But if it's actually, look, we're in this together, your success is our success, your failure is our failure, then actually, and being data driven as well, taking the emotion out of it somewhat, allows you to kind of steer towards a common goal, and that's what's absolutely.
And it gives everyone a clear path, a clear timeline. And that's why for me, probably, obviously, you don't want to be in a project that gets to that stage. But if I ever personally come in and it's project recovery or we're at that stage, CTJ meetings and meetings that are war rooms, best meetings, because like you say, coming out of the other side of that, especially if you resolve and you do recover, the camaraderie that will exist, the trust that will exist between you and the stakeholders is another level. And after that, you're pretty much able to take on anything. And oftentimes, if you do have that before the project goes live, the bit that comes after with hypercare and the chaos that normally ensues, whether it's your first month end or something like that, or your first production running go live, then everyone's familiar with each other's ways of working and they can have a bit more confidence.
The bit you enjoy.
That's the bit I enjoy because I've thought about this, and I think the reason I enjoy that more often than not is I know the solution and I know it works. That's my thing. I know the solution, I know it works, I know how it works. If someone has a problem, it could be that they don't like the way the solution's working. It could be that there's a configuration missing that makes it work for them. There's always an answer, typically. You'll only ever see me stressed where I feel like there isn't an answer. And then I'll be a bit stressed. But that very rarely happens because, again, the solution is as such that you can almost customize it to work any way you want. So I do like it from that point of view. But we've spent a lot of time talking about people. And digital transformation. I do want to spend a bit of time just talking about you because I know recently you have undergone or you've acquired some certifications and qualifications. And I look at your name on LinkedIn now, and it's Dwayne Lynch, and there's a lot of letters after it. I think CMI, and there's a few other letters. I won't guess because then I could say the wrong letters, and then it means something else, right? So. Just tell us a bit about those certifications and what they mean. And
so I got a chartered management consultant accreditation last year, and really when I was offered the chance by PwC, I felt quite almost humbled by it. Actually, I had never really. This is a little bit self-deprecating. I'd never really felt like a proper consultant, a proper management consultant. I'd always felt like a kind of a technology project manager who focused on delivering technology. And the idea of being a bona fide management consultant just almost felt a little bit alien to me. But then I guess going through the process, which essentially was a kind of a personal statement, answer a number of questions that are focused on core competencies, and then essentially an interview, similar to a job interview, but again, focused on those core competencies. And going through that process and being challenged on where I've delivered particular benefits or where I've had to question the ethics of either a colleague or a client or something like that, you kind of see that, do you know what, our every day is being a management consultant. Our every day is going in, talking to clients, understanding what their problems are, understanding what their strategies are, and coming up with solutions. And as a project manager, like I was saying earlier, I rely so heavily on the people who know what they're talking about in terms of technology. But ultimately, I am facilitating that problem solving. Yeah. And the whole experience was actually quite humbling because it kind of almost allowed me to prove to myself that I am a management consultant. And
certified,
and having the letters after the name just proved that somewhat. So really interesting experience, really humbling, and it kind of, if you like, set the need for dopamine and getting a few more certifications, mainly around Microsoft that I've been quite obsessed with recently as well. So you're never too old to learn. No. Old dogs can learn new tricks as well.
Absolutely, and there's in the Microsoft space as well, there's always a new certification. It always needs updating. So there's plenty of opportunities to that. But I will say from my side, it's interesting you say you never seen yourself as a management consultant, because going back to what I said earlier, because you are so personable, because you are so likable, because you do know your stuff, and we've been speaking for however long, and so you know what you're doing. So I've always seen you as more than a program manager, and you are that facilitator, and you do have that management consulting, because I think that's what it needs. And I think the hardest thing about what you do, and even what I do, is making it stop when you come away from the project. So, I oftentimes find myself at home, I'm just looking at everything as a configuration issue that needs to be resolved in my house, but which my wife hates hearing me say, but it's who we are at this point.
It's so funny you say that about the, and I've had a lot of solution architects say this to me, like, how do you do what you do? And I feel the same about what you do, because I know how I envision you guys, and I think about what the solution architect role looks like, and you're having to come up with answers on the spot constantly. Whereas I at least have the ability to defer it and say, well, that feels more of a technical, functional type kind of thing. I just do the project stuff. And having to be constantly on and constantly knowing what the technology does or what it can do and what a new hotfix might do and all of that kind of stuff, for me, that's the biggest challenge. So that pressure, I just find it so interesting when people say, well, how do you do what you do? Because you guys are the rock stars. I'm just kind of like, I'm the tour manager, basically.
It's interesting you say that, because I think it's a partnership and again, from when we've worked together, it's been like this, but you can know the solution, and I often find myself in these scenarios where the solution, I know what works, you also start to learn about the people, and so you can tell where there's real problems and maybe there's a people problem or a person problem. And the beauty of a good project or program manager is you can then defer that to them and say, well, this is the reality. This is give them the data, right? Give them the facts. And then they go and work their magic with senior stakeholders, and what comes back is clear direction on which way you're going. And then you get to move on quickly to the next thing, and you don't get hung up in this 1.1 area.
I always say the best solution architects and technical architects are those individuals who I can ask a question with them knowing that I've got a limited amount of technology understanding in terms of the bits and the bytes, as I call it, and be able to articulate a problem or a goal to me in such a way that A, I understand, and B, I can recommunicate to a stakeholder. You know what it's like. You've worked with people who you ask a question and they almost want to bamboozle you with their brilliance and their technical capability. Where actually some of the best people I work with are those who can just lay it out simply and say, this is the issue, this is how we're planning on resolving it, X, Y, and Z needs to happen in order to make that happen. Off you go. That's all I need. And those people I will work with for life.
No, that's it. And I think it needs to be simplified and broken down to that level for it to work. So
draw it for me in crayon is what I often tell people.
And again, it goes back to you're delivering this to people, not machines, right? So people need to understand, and it's people who don't, whether it's not just the program managers, the people on the ground, the people on the client side, it's their first time interacting with the solution. They need to understand it. If they don't understand it, they're not going to buy into it. So I've had that as an approach throughout my career, and I've seen it work really well. Because I've seen the other side of solution architects who bamboozle and it turns people off. So I try to incorporate that into what I do and simplify things. But on the topic of people in digital transformation projects, and more specifically, Dynamics 365, finance and operations, ERP implementations, one of the key roles I find, and I advise every client is crucial, is internal change champions. And they can be anyone from, a business process lead. It could be someone who's just boots on the ground who has visibility across multiple work streams. It could be an SME in a particular area. But change champions are critical and crucial to any implementation project. From your point of view, how do you identify the right person or the right people for this change champion roles? And what is the impact of having good change champions and that can drive change?
Oh man, these people are gold. Honestly, change champions. So it can seem such an undervalued role because they're so crucial in that. I guess the way I look about identifying change champions is they can be somebody who's normally embedded in the current processes in the current department as it stands, and they know how things work. They know the network. They know the things that have gone wrong previously. It might be somebody who has been in the middle of a really bad month end or not being able to pay suppliers because a payment run went wrong or something like that, and they've kind of got the war wounds and they understand. And these individuals, absolute gold dust. You go on the journey with them, and I like them being part of any kind of sprint cadences that we've got and playbacks and stuff like that, because they are able to talk to their colleagues in a language that sometimes as a supplier or you don't necessarily understand, but they're able to use certain language or certain reference points or certain jargon that we might not necessarily get. I've had it where and this wasn't on a project with you, but I had it where we were talking about invoice processing, independent service provider that was going to completely revolutionize the way that they do their invoice processing. Yeah. And we were walking this lady through it, and honestly, she almost cried with joy at how much time that this was going to save her, and immediately ran off and told all of her colleagues about the impact that was going to have. And it sounds really small and insignificant, but that buzz and that things are going to be better. Yeah. And this journey that we're going on is going to be a lot easier than it was before. And actually, we all need to get our weight behind this, because it's going to make our lives easier. It's going to save us time. And those people are they just make our lives easier, because they're almost doing the marketing for us. And in such a way that we wouldn't be able to do, because we don't understand that specific language. So for me, they're absolutely fundamental. I love working with them. It can be a really undervalued role if not sold in the right way. And it's a lot of extra. It can be a lot of extra work sometimes. But so there needs to be a kind of a passion and a way of working that really drives these people on. They are often prime candidates for, if we're doing kind of a train the trainer, for example, because they've been through all of the sessions, they understand what the solution looks like, and again, they understand their current processes. So they are able to add reference and add weight to, okay, well, this new solution is doing that. Remember how we did it before? Well, that's going to change now, because actually Khalid has come in and he said that this process is now going to be done by 2 clicks as opposed to 5. Yeah. Or there's going to be a new integration that's going to do that for you. So, like I say, these people are gold, and I just love working with them, because they're so crucial to everything that we do and the transformations that we do with them.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And I couldn't say it better. I'd say one thing with regards to change champions is they are critical. It is such an undervalued role on projects. And even till today, it's a role that is missing from many digital transformation projects. And it's a key reason why the adoption of digital transformation right at the end of that journey can fail at that point.
100%.
Because you've not had that change champion or change champions throughout. And I often say any kind of digital transformation, and again, in our field of ERP implementation with Microsoft Dynamics, it's as much about getting the system in. It's also, as much as it's about getting the system in, it's also a PR exercise. Mm-hmm. And it's about how well the business users receive the solution, and it will drive adoption and the success of it. And again, that example you gave of the change champion seeing something and getting excited and spreading the word makes our lives so much easier. 100%. Because by the time you get in the room with the rest of the team, everyone's leaning in, and they're ready to use the system and ready to take it on. So I couldn't agree with you more on your explanation of the importance of change champions. And I hope, if there's anything, we've spoken about a lot of things, but if there's anything anyone out there who's going for a digital transformation project is doing right now, they need to make sure they have change champions embedded in their project. And the profile of a change champion, I think you mentioned there, is someone who generally has the knowledge of not only the area they work in, but all the areas it touches, all of the inputs and outputs. Then they also have an enthusiasm for change, for the new system. They can speak in terms of not just system, but in terms of business process and use business language. With that, you guarantee yourself a greater chance of success, especially right at the end of the digital transformation journey, where the focus becomes user adoption and user perception of the solution that's been implemented.
100%. And I guess the only thing I would add to that as well is the network as well. The best change champions tend to know the people as well. So yes. I always talk about Bob from accounts, who's been doing things the same way for 20 years, every day in, day out. And these change champions tend to know Bob, and Bob works in the dungeon, as I call it. And unless you understand who this person is, how they work, what knowledge they have, and understand that Bob is critical to the way that we do things, we need to bring him on that journey as well. And if you've not got the right stakeholder analysis and you've not kind of done your homework right, then change champions can help bridge that gap and kind of say, well, look, you know what, I've been speaking to Bob at the water cooler, and we've not got him involved enough in this. let's get him involved. Let's make sure that he understands exactly the journey that we're going on. And again, they're critical to kind of bringing us on that journey as well.
They are. I've worked with those people before.
You know Bob.
I've worked with Bob. And yeah, it's critical. I used to do a thing actually. So in the kickoff sessions for projects, you normally get like the project team or key stakeholders around the table, or you might have some SMEs and BPLs. So everyone normally goes around the table and they explain what they do and how they interact with the system. And I would, in my notepad, I would obviously have everyone's name down, and I would put smiley faces next to each name. So, because I'm already starting the process of reading the room and trying to understand the PR exercise ahead. So normally from the way people introduce themselves, what they do, how they talk about the current system and processes, you can gauge whether they're going to be, highly perceptive to change or very resistant. You got the people that say, there's, I'm here because there's a certain way we work, and I'm here to make sure it works the same way. I won't copy and paste. And there's the people that says, "Oh, the current system's not great. I'm looking forward to the." It's people that will say in their intro, "Really excited to be here because I'm looking forward to seeing what Dynamics can do." And I keep that going throughout. So throughout key requirements gathering things.
So that's your secret.
Yeah,
finally we found out.
So and then you'll see during go live, you'll see the people I spend the most time with. And I'll invest time in the people that have a positive outlook in Dynamics because, like you say, they can then go and spread the word and give you more information on different people in the company. But then you'll also spend a significant amount of time with the people who are least perceptive because you're really trying to get to the root cause of why they love the current process so much and explain to them that, this is what you're getting out of Dynamics, and it's not actually changing that much, or the change is actually beneficial. You don't always win them over, but yeah, it tells you who to focus on.
I like it. I'm stealing that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good thing. You can always tell who, and it always rings true as well. So yeah, you get those people. So yeah, no. Dwayne, it's been really good having this conversation with you. Like I said, long overdue, and I'm glad we've been able to do it. I hope it's not the last time we have one of these conversations. So you're welcome back anytime. Maybe the next time you get some more letters after your name. No pressure. I'll be keeping an eye out for some new signatures. But no, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.